Hey there Retro Games fans, this is Andy C from Pieces of 8-Bit. Welcome to this week's video. Now, when people talk about the greatest gaming platforms of all time, the Commodore Amiga 500 immediately enters the chat. And for good reason. It was released in 1987 and the Amiga wasn't just another home computer, it was just light years ahead of anything else at the time. We had smooth scrolling, we had incredible sound, vibrant colours, arcade quality experiences. They all suddenly became possible in the home years before many consoles could match it. Bear in mind that we are still in the NES era at this point. But what really made the Amiga special wasn't just the hardware, it was the games. The Amiga became home to some of the most creative, experimental and influential titles of the late 80s and early 90s. We had everything from cinematic adventures, fast arcade racers, brutal action games, clever puzzle experiences, and some of the greatest multiplayer titles ever made, in my opinion at least anyway. They all found a natural home here on the Amiga 500. And something really interesting happens when you look back at the Amiga library, in fact. So many of its defining games came from British and European studios. Companies like Psygnosis, Team 17, Sensible Software, Bitmap Brothers, DMA Design, later Rockstar North of course, they helped to shape what Amiga gaming would actually feel like, partly because the Amiga was just enormously successful across the UK and Europe. Developers there embraced the platform in a way that America largely didn't, which gave the Amiga a distinctly European identity, which is weird for an American machine. And everything was kind of creative, experimental, often quite technically ambitious actually, and sometimes, quite often in fact, just a little bit weird. I'm actually going to be diving much deeper into that British and European Amiga phenomenon in a future video, because that is a fascinating story in its own right. Now, before we get into this, before we begin, I just want to clarify, this isn't really a top 10 countdown because, to be honest with you, trying to rank Amiga games against each other is almost impossible. Instead, I'm treating this more as a sort of celebration of the standout games across a range of categories that help define the platform. So we're going to be having a look at, I just need to put my glasses on so I can read this. We're going to be having a look at the best action platformers, definitive puzzle game, iconic racers, cinematic storytelling experiences, multiplayer legends, futuristic sports games, atmospheric sci-fi shooters, point-and-click adventures, technical strategy classics, and technical showcases that push the Amiga to its limits. So, I've recorded a bunch of gameplay footage, so we are going to get right into that. Yeah, basically, these aren't just Amiga games as well. I just want to point that out. They're not just Amiga specific games, but they are games, I think, that help to explain why so many people love this machine decades later, and why some of these games, despite being on many platforms, are the definitive. They are the definitive versions. The Amiga versions are the best ones. So yeah, let's get right into it. It's about 1,000,000 degrees centigrade in here. For those of you who are in the UK, you'll know it is very warm here at the moment. So I am, very warm. So I need to get into this and just talk you through my 10 top picks from those categories I mentioned above. So let's get right into it now. I'll see you in there. Okay, first up is our action platformer, and in this particular category we have got Turrican 2: The Final Fight. This is a run and gun action platformer. It was released in 1991 and developed by Factor 5, the only one of our entries in this list that isn't a British studio, and that is not by design, that is just by pure fluke based on the games that I picked and I loved. Now, if you owned an Amiga in the early 1990s, then this game was practically a rite of passage. Huge levels, huge weapons, hidden secrets everywhere, and one of the greatest video game soundtracks ever created by a chap called Chris Hulsbeck. Hopefully I said that right. What really made Turrican 2 special on the Amiga, though, was just how cinematic and polished it felt. The scrolling is really smooth, the graphics are incredibly detailed for the time, as you can see, and it genuinely felt like an arcade quality game and experience running on your home computer, and be under no illusion as to how big of a deal that actually is. Critics really loved it when it launched, and decades later it's still generally regarded as one of the greatest Amiga games ever made. And for many people, this is the definitive Turrican game, the second one, and one of the titles that showed what the Amiga could really do. Bearing in mind, this is 80s technology running this. It's absolutely incredible. My experience of Turrican actually is probably a little bit more recent. I didn't come to this game until more recently. I didn't really have much of an opportunity to play it through the 90s. Mostly only really played the first one, but this second one is absolutely amazing. Not the first game in our series as well, where the sequel actually is largely considered to be better. We'll get to some of those later on. So you don't need to have played this game a lot. You just need to play this game to know just how fabulous it is. It's incredibly challenging. It's very, very hard, but it looks amazing, and it has got huge replayability value. So there you go. That is our action platformer. Let's have a look at the next entry in our list, and it's one that we've seen fairly recently. I'll see you there. Okay, so next up is our definitive puzzle game category, and it is of course Lemmings, released in 1991 by DMA Design, the studio that would eventually of course become Rockstar North, as I mentioned before. On paper this game sounds ridiculous. You have to guide tiny green-haired creatures safely through deadly levels by assigning them jobs like builders, climbers, bombers, diggers, whatever. But in practice, this game is pure addiction. And honestly, this is probably the definitive version of Lemmings. It was released on a whole bunch of platforms, but the mouse controls on the Amiga 500 feel perfect and really makes this game feel like this is where it belongs. The sound design, of course, is iconic, and visually, it just feels at home here, as I say. The game, of course, was a massive commercial success, and it became one of the defining puzzle games of the era, and I think just forever. It's just an amazing game. It spawned sequels, ports to pretty much everything imaginable, and it helped establish the Amiga as the home of really clever, creative computer gaming rather than just arcade style experiences. And go and check my video out. No spoilers, but I just love this game. It's amazing, and it is just pure brilliance. It's fantastic. I absolutely adore it. It's such a lot of fun to play, and I played this so much back in the 90s, and I've played it on lots and lots of different platforms, but for me the Amiga 500 version is the definitive proper version, if you like, in inverted commas. It's where you need to play it. So there you go. That is Lemmings. Let's have a look now at an iconic racer in our next section. Right, well, this is one of my absolute favourite racers of all time, not just the Amiga. This is Lotus Turbo Challenge 2. It hit the Amiga in 1991 from Magnetic Fields. For a lot of Amiga owners, this was the racing game. Fast roads, gorgeous scaling graphics, brilliant music. I love the soundtrack in this game. And most importantly, fantastic split-screen multiplayer. I did a lot of split-screen multiplayer on this game back in the 90s, and it's one of my favourite split-screen racers ever. It's just fabulous. And the Amiga version really stands out because it perfectly balances the speed and presentation. It looked incredible at the time. Fantastic weather effects. They remembered by most, and the password for the fog level, pea-soup, everybody remembers that. And the constantly changing scenery, all coupled with controls that perfect that sort of arcade feel without becoming too frustrating. It reviewed extremely well back in the day and became one of the platform's most beloved racers. Even now, mention Amiga racing games to any Amiga fan, and Lotus 2 is going to be the first thing that people bring up. Why not 1 and why not 3? Well, for me, I think this is the better of the trilogy. As I mentioned earlier, this is another example of the sequel being better than the original. I think it just improves so much on the original game, and it just looks better, plays better, And then I just don't think I just don't think 3 is as good. I can't really put my finger on it. It just doesn't feel as smooth. It doesn't feel as, I don't know. I don't know what it is. 2 is the definitive version, and I think most people who've played this game would probably agree. So there you go. That is our racer. Let's now have a look at the next entry, which is our cinematic storytelling experience. I'll see you in there. Okay, this is Another World by, well, Out of This World in some regions actually, released in 1991 and was created largely by one person, a chap called Eric Chahi. I think I've got that right. I hope I've got that right. And it's a cinematic adventure game that feels decades, literally decades ahead of its time. It is absolutely fabulous. Now, I actually reviewed this game I guess probably a couple of years ago, and I had never actually played it before. I heard a lot about it. People talked about it all the time. So I felt I needed to give it a go, and I played through it quite a bit. It's very, very difficult. It's very, very challenging, but fabulous nonetheless. You play as a scientist, and basically you get transported to a hostile alien world after an experiment fails, and what follows is this kind of atmospheric, quite lonely actually, almost movie-like experience. There's very little dialogue, and there is this incredible visual storytelling. The Amiga version in particular is especially important because it showcased really just how artistic games could be on the platform. The rotoscoped animation, the cinematic cutscenes, the soundtrack, all helped create something that felt really quite unique in 1991, despite the fact that I wasn't one of the people that experienced it back at the time. But critically, it was hugely praised for its innovation and presentation, and its influence can still be seen in many games today. It's fantastic. You can see me trying to figure out the controls. This is the recording I did some while ago. But yeah, it is a fabulous game, and I really enjoyed having a look at this through 2024 eyes, I guess, at the time, having never really played it much before. So yeah, fantastic game. Definitely go check it out. But yeah, absolutely wonderful. Obviously, also go and check out my old review of it as well if you want to. So yes, that is Another World, or Out of This World, as I mentioned, in some other regions. Let's have a look at our next one, which is what I think is a multiplayer legend. Let's get into it. Now, next up, we have Sensible Soccer from Sensible Studios. This was released in 1992, and honestly, I think this might be one of the most addictive football games ever made. And I can say that as somebody who doesn't even really like football that much. Never been into FIFA, never been into... I was into Pro Evo a little bit, but generally speaking, this is a game that I played loads. Unlike your realistic simulations, Sensible Soccer is all about that fast gameplay. It's all about the precision in your passing, and most importantly, chaos with friends. Now, I've had my son's friends over when he was about, I guess he was about 15. His friends came over. I introduced them to this game. They wanted to play this. I had FIFA. I had plenty of other games. We got a PlayStation 5 and a Series X and all that kind of stuff, and they wanted to play this on my Raspberry Pi emulated. That is just how good this game is and how much appeal it still has to this day. Don't be confused by the simplicity of how this game looks, and the tiny overhead perspective does look very, very simple, but underneath is a game that has incredible depth and incredible responsiveness actually. The Amiga version itself is legendary because it just felt right with a joystick, I think, probably more than anything else. Multiplayer sessions became the stuff of legend, and for many people, this game completely defines local competitive gaming in the early 90s. And its influence stretched far beyond the Amiga too. It inspired arcade-style football games for years to come. And yeah, this game is absolutely fantastic. I absolutely love it. Played it loads. And this is another game I also looked at a little bit of a while ago with my son. We did a bit of a competitive game, which is actually what's going on here at the moment. So yes, that is Sensible Soccer by Sensible Software, an amazing multiplayer game, a fantastic sports game, and yeah, still very playable today. Let's have a look at another sports style game in our next section. Right, so this is a little bit of a cheat of a category because it sort of falls into the Sensible Soccer one, but I just love this game anyway. So I'm going to call this Futuristic Sports game as if that is a sensible category. And of course, this is Speedball 2 Brutal Deluxe. And again, another sequel that is better than the original. I've played the original Speedball, there's nothing wrong with it at all, but Speedball 2 is absolutely phenomenal. It was released, like I say, in 1990 by the Bitmap brothers, and Speedball 2 Brutal Deluxe mixes sort of handball, cyberpunk violence and futuristic sports into one of the coolest games on the Amiga. I thought this game looked amazing. Everyone looks a little bit like RoboCop. But I thought this game was so cool. I thought it looked incredible. The styling of it is just amazing. Everything about this game screams style. Those metallic visuals, the aggressive soundtrack, the commentary samples that you hear, and the sheer speed of the gameplay, it's absolutely mad. It's so quick. It felt very edgy. It felt very futuristic. And so few games did back then. I've got an honourable mention that might fall into that category, which we'll mention at the end. But the Amiga version is widely considered the definitive release, and this is largely down, as usual, to the smooth performance, incredible presentation. Reviews were excellent at the time, and the game became one of Bitmap Brothers' most iconic titles. Even today, Speedball 2 is remembered as one of the most defining examples of that uniquely British Amiga game design style and feel that I mentioned before. So yes, absolutely fantastic. Next up is a really interesting one because there's a little fact in the next one that I didn't know. So let's go and have a look at our next entry. Okay, so next up is Alien Breed, and this is my category of atmospheric sci-fi shooters, which you could almost be forgiven for thinking I made that category up just so I could slot this game in. And, you know, there might be some truth in that, but I don't care. This is, yes, as I say, this is Alien Breed, and it arrived in 1991 from Team 17, and it quickly became one of the Amiga's defining multiplayer experiences. It's inspired heavily by films like Alien, and that's the interesting fact. I just assumed it was Alien. I didn't realise I was literally today years old when I was doing my research for this, when I realised that it was only inspired by it. So yes, fair play to Team 17 because they got away with it. Frankly, I don't know how, because it really does feel like Alien. And it blends top-down shooting, exploration and horror into something that feels really tense and atmospheric. The Amiga handles the lighting, the sound, the detailed environments brilliantly. It just takes them in its stride. And playing this in co-op with a friend was absolutely unforgettable. I can definitely vouch for that. Critics praised the atmosphere and the visuals, and the game really did help to establish Team 17 as one of the most important Amiga developers of the era. Love them or hate them, because people have very mixed feelings about Team 17, yeah, especially in modern times. But back then, they were at the height of their powers, and this game was one of their most important games ever, I think. Yeah, some would argue even more important than Worms. Alien Breed kicked off a long-running franchise, actually, and helped to cement that darker sci-fi aesthetic that became so associated with Amiga gaming back in the early 90s. Now, I have very fond memories of playing this game. I played it loads, and I actually found this game quite scary. As you get further into it, it does become really, really tense. And yeah, you get the alarm, you got the timer, you get your little radar thing with the aliens on it later on. It very, very alien-esque. Yeah, it is just absolutely brilliant. Very, very playable. Good level of difficulty as well. It's not crazy difficult, but it is quite hard. It is quite challenging. Okay, let's have a look at the next entry in our list. I'll see you there. Okay, so next up, our next category is point and click adventures, and it had to be this one, didn't it? This is The Secret of Monkey Island from 1990. And actually, I must correct my statement from the beginning where I said there was only one British house in here. Actually, there's a couple, because this is LucasArts. And point and click adventures were huge on computers in the early 90s, and few are more iconic than The Secret of Monkey Island, released in 1990 by Lucasfilm Games. You play as Guybrush Threepwood, who you might have noticed a little bit of a similarity with Pixelbeard, my channel logo, and that is not by accident. He is heavily inspired by Guybrush Threepwood, actually. And he is an aspiring pirate, and basically navigates puzzles, has sword fights, and there's lots of ridiculous humour across the Caribbean. The writing in this game is absolutely hilarious, like so many of the original Scum games, the Lucasfilm games that we had back in the 90s. The characters are utterly unforgettable, and the atmosphere is just pure charm. The Amiga version was absolutely fantastic because the mouse-driven interface just felt so much easier and so much more natural on the platform, and visually it looks amazing. Monkey Island became one of the most influential adventure games ever made, actually, and helped define LucasArts' golden age of storytelling and comedy. It's such a shame that it's not around anymore. And yeah, we had a remake not that long ago. I've played the remake. It's really, really good. Basically the same game, but lots of tidier, more modern graphics, but it hasn't lost that charm. And of course, this game really is the start of so many amazing games that came that I absolutely loved, that point and click genre. Sam and Max Hit the Road, one of my favourite games from the 90s. Day of the Tentacle, The Dig, Beneath the Steel Sky. Loads of those games were just absolutely fantastic, and later on we got also the Grim Fandango. So this was just fantastic. It was an amazing game, and this one really started it all. Of course, we had sequels as well, all really, really good. But this, in my opinion, is the definitive one, the one that started it all, and the best version. It is The Secret of Monkey Island from 1990 by Lucasfilms, not a British house, I should mention. Okay, so next up is our strategy game, our tactical strategy game, and there can be only one entry in this category. Let's go and have a look and see what it is. Okay, this is another entry from Sensible Software, and this is Cannon Fodder from 1993, and it blends strategy and action in a way that was both hilarious, fun, and surprisingly emotional, actually. And at first glance, it seems quite cartoonish, but underneath it is a game about war. It's about loss, and it's about survival. Your soldiers could permanently die, and suddenly you became very attached to these tiny little characters, especially as they survived for mission after mission. They would get promoted if they survived, and yeah, you became quite attached to them, especially some of the early ones. You know, if they managed to make it through a few missions, when they died later on, you'd be quite sad about it, actually. The Amiga version, always mention why I've picked the Amiga version, is particularly beloved thanks to the smooth controls and the mouse-driven tactical gameplay. That mouse-driven gameplay just makes this so much better than anything you're going to get on a console. It reviewed incredibly well, and it was famous for its anti-war messaging, actually, despite appearing to glamorise it a little bit. It even caused a little bit of controversy with its poppy flower imagery on the box art. And in fact, there is a screen that pops up that says this is in no way affiliated with the Royal British Legion in the UK. But it has a blend of humour, there's action, and as I mentioned, emotional impact, and it makes it one of the most memorable games on the platform. I've played this game so much over the years on lots of different platforms, but this Amiga version for me is my favourite. What you're seeing on the screen now is an emulated version of it, which works even better than on the Amiga itself, because the mouse, my left mouse button is on the way out on my Amiga mouse. So it works really, really well on here. It's so responsive. It's so easy to get into. It's so accessible. And yeah, lots of fun. Lots and lots of fun. So there you go. Right. So finally then is our last entry. And let's dive into that to find out what that is and also what the category is. I'll see you in there. Okay, so our last category then is essentially a technical showcase. This is a game that pushed the Amiga hardware to its absolute limits, and this is a game actually from the 80s, so pretty early in the life cycle of the Amiga 500. This is Shadow of the Beast from 1989, and full disclosure, yeah, this isn't a game I played a lot. At least it's not a game that I particularly remember all that well. But playing it in subsequent years, I can absolutely see why people love this game. You can also see on the screen why you can tell I haven't played it a lot, because I'm absolutely rubbish at it. So yes, this is Shadow of the Beast. It was released in '89 by Psygnosis, and this is a game that probably sold thousands of Amigas on its own, to be honest. It's a side-scrolling action game, and it became famous for its unbelievable visuals, multiple layers of parallax scrolling in the background, as you can see there, enormous sprites, atmospheric sound, and a dark fantasy world that looked light years, generations ahead of other home systems at the time. Was it the best playing game on the Amiga? Probably not, maybe not, but it was brutally difficult. I can definitely vouch for that, and sometimes a little clunky, but as a technical showcase, absolutely astonishing. Shadow of the Beast became one of the defining visual demonstrations of the Amiga 500, and it remains one of the most iconic games associated with the machine. So there you go, that is Shadow of the Beast. That is my last entry. Let's get back and have my final thoughts, and yeah, I'll give you a few honourable mentions as well. Let's dive into that. Okay, so what did you think of my entries there? My sort of top 10, well, they weren't top 10 really, but 10 defining games for the Amiga. 10 games that really showcased what the hardware was capable of, and they are, to be honest with you, 10 of my favourite games. But the couple that I haven't played so much, I still really love them, but there's some games in there that I just played so much back in the 90s on the Amiga. They are just some amazing ones. Some others I could have mentioned, a couple of futuristic-y ones. So we've got Chaos Engine and Syndicate, two other really, really fabulous games as well that we could have mentioned in there. Zool is another one, sort of a bit of a pretender to the Sonic Throne, but really, really good. When I played Zool actually more recently with the joystick, the newly reinvented joystick, the QuickShot 2, it made so much more sense. It's a really good fun, fast-paced, bright and colourful, good scrolling background, all those kind of things. That was really good. Another game that I also had a look at recently as well, Wings. is also really cool as well. That game is brutally difficult. Yeah, really enjoyed that as well. And of course, other sort of strategy games. You got Theme Park in there, another good honourable mention. I like Theme Park. I don't think it's held up as well, Theme Park. It was on a million different platforms, including the 3DO. I've got the 3DO version of that. But yeah, there's a few sort of entries there that I probably could have included. I could have included so many. I could have just carried on for ages and ages and listed 100 games and done it that way. I could have done the 100 greatest games for Amiga as well. You know, it's just, there's so many to pick from. And in fact, actually, as part of the month with living with the Amiga 500, it's going to be difficult to pick games that I want to play, and you might find that some of the games that we've been talking about today reappearing in the month with later on, because they are just so fabulous. But there's so many great games, thousands and thousands of games, and I've probably played quite, not thousands, I haven't played thousands, but I've played a lot of games on the Amiga back in the day, so I've got to try and remember some of them to try and do. I've got an idea what I'm going to do for next week actually, but you'll have to tune in to find out what it is. Not one of these, I might add, but another one that I really enjoy. I've not mentioned it today. So there you go. Those are some games that I think you should go look at. If you're just getting into Amiga for the first time, if you're intrigued and you're looking at it, these are 10 really good games to get you started. Hopefully, depending on the sort of category of game you're thinking of, you can pick one from this list to get started with. Yeah, I could pick one to get started with, but that's why I've done 10, because I can't. It's just too difficult. If you're an Amiga fan and you're just intrigued by what I might have picked, do let me know in the comments below whether you agree with my choices or whether you'd pick some others or what additional ones you think I should chuck in there. There will be loads, I don't doubt that, and I apologise if there's a game in there that you really love and you think, why the heck did Andy not pick that? Because that is a game I just absolutely adore. So drop some comments below. Just my opinion. As always with these opinion pieces, it is just my opinion. Yeah, that was it. So those are my 10 top picks for the Amiga 500. Go check them out. Coming on the channel then, I am going to be starting to release my videos a little bit later in the day. I just need to give myself a little bit more time in the evenings to get them done. So we'll be adjusting the time. I don't think it really matters to most people. You'll just pick them up when you pick them up. But for any people out there who happen to be waiting at 6 o'clock for my videos to drop, I will be dropping them slightly later in the evening. I'm probably aiming to do probably about 8 o'clock UK time, so keep an eye open for them. They may drop a little bit earlier if they're done, but it just gives me a bit more time to get them edited on a Friday afternoon. So this will be the last one that releases at 6. Yeah, so that's coming up. Well, that's coming up. That's just a thing. That's not really that important. A few little interesting pickups over the last few weeks. So I managed to pick up myself a Core Graphics Mini. Just happened to be in my local CEX, so I had to get that. And I have also picked up a 3DO, although I have only one game for it, which I've already mentioned, which was Theme Park. So I need to get some more bits and pieces for that, but I'm super happy about that. So a couple more things to include in the month with as we go over throughout the course of this year. Of course, I mentioned that there will be a bit between, and I have already picked, I'm pretty sure I've picked my game for this one, so stay tuned next Wednesday for that. And next week I will also be talking a little bit about my own Amiga experiences, and a little bit about what I mentioned earlier about why the UK houses were so important and the European houses were so important in building the games and how it came to define the Amiga. There's lots and lots of history and interesting background to the Amiga, both from its heyday and in the future as well. I kind of don't want to cover it too much because there's loads of really good documentaries and videos out there about the Amiga, but I wanted to just talk a little bit about my experiences and why I love the machine and how I got into it, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that video as well. So there you go, I've talked enough. So we'll leave it there for this week. If you do enjoy these videos, please do hit that like and subscribe button and hit the bell icon as well for notifications so you don't miss out on anything. Really do appreciate your support. Obviously, if you're that way inclined, please do hit that button. But obviously no pressure. Yeah, that probably just leaves me to say yeah, that's it for today. So please do all take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, bye for now.